mention is that today's session is being recorded, and it will be available to you after the presentation should you need to come back to reference anything or play back anything that was discussed. I am muting everyone just so that everyone can hear the information being presented, but I will allow time at the end of the session for questions and answers, at which point you could then unmute yourself and we can just answer or address any questions that you have. In the meantime, feel free to use the chat feature to jot down any questions you have as we go through today's presentation, and I will periodically pause throughout the presentation to address questions as well as save time at the end for question and answer. Lastly, I will say that there is going to be a lot of information being presented today, and it's not our intent, to overwhelm you with the information being presented, but what I do suggest is just listening to what's being presented. Just know that you will have access to the PowerPoint as well as this recording should you need to reference later. So just sit back and relax and enjoy what's being presented. Okay, so let's get started. First and foremost, I do want to just commend you all for seeking information about becoming a teacher. I think the teaching profession is a very noble profession. It allows one to walk alongside individuals, teach them, form them, shape them into becoming future citizens. It's a way to give back to your community, and I think that it's a very exciting point in your life where you are gathering this information. I think from today's presentation, you will find that Cal Poly Pomona offers wonderful credential programs. We have what's called a learn by doing approach, where you not only get information in the classroom, but then you do get opportunities to apply what you're learning in the classroom into real world situations. In this case, you would go into actual classrooms to observe teachers, possibly present lessons, and it's a great opportunity for you to get both the book knowledge and the hands-on experience that you will then take into your own classrooms once you are once you become a teacher. So great thing about Cal Poly in that regard. Additionally, we do have faculty and staff that are wonderful. They're here to walk alongside you and help you reach your goal of becoming a teacher. And there's always someone here that you can reach out and ask a question, and we'll be happy to direct you to wherever you need to go to get whatever issue is being addressed at that point. Additionally, we have flexibility in our course offerings. We do offer courses in the mornings, afternoons, and evenings, with most of our courses offered in the evenings to accommodate the working student, as well as students who may already be teaching in the classroom. Lastly, I will say that our credential programs are affordable when you compare it to some of the other credential programs out there. So and we also have financial aid and scholarships available. So there's lots of opportunities and ways to help you fund your goal of becoming a teacher. So stay tuned. I think you're going to like what you hear. I'm going to progress to our next screen, which is just a view of the campus. And before I jump into the credential programs offered at Cal Poly Pomona, I did want to just briefly talk about the credentialing process in California. So in the state of California, when you complete the requirements for the credential, the university or credential program that you complete is not actually going to issue you the credential. It's going to come from the state. And the agency in the state of California that oversees credentialing is the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing, or CTC. Some of you may have heard that term. The CTC outlines all the requirements to become a teacher, and they're listed here on this slide at the bottom half. There's 7 requirements, and those include a bachelor's degree. So you do need to complete a bachelor's degree in order to pursue a credential. You will need to satisfy what's called the basic skills requirement, as well as the subject matter competency requirement. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about those in subsequent slides. For those of you pursuing a multiple subject or education specialist credential, you will also need to, at one point, pass what's called the Reading Instruction Competence Assessment, or RECA exam. If you're pursuing a single subject credential, that exam is not required. So it's only required for those pursuing multiple subject or education specialist credentials. Item number 5, you will need to complete a course in the provisions and principles of the U.S. Constitution. For those of you who graduate from a CSU campus, you will meet the U.S. Constitution requirement upon graduation. For those of you who may be attending not a CSU campus, a Cal State University, maybe you're attending a UC campus or a private institution, there may be a course in your undergraduate studies that fulfills the U.S. Constitution requirement, but we may need to look into that based on where you are attending. For those, item number 6, you will need to complete what's called a commission-approved subject matter preparation program. And Cal Poly Pomona does offer commission-approved subject matter preparation programs. Lastly, number 7 is you will need to obtain a formal recommendation. For those of you, if you could just double check that you're muted, just so that we don't hear any additional background noise. Item number 7 is you will need to obtain a formal recommendation from your program sponsor, and that would come from your credential program. So once all of those items are completed, the program that you attend for your credential will recommend you to the state. The state will review everything. If everything looks good, they'll issue you your teaching credential. Now there's several credentials programs that you can pursue. On this screen, those are the 3 that are offered at Cal Poly Pomona, and those include the multiple subject credential, the single subject credential, and the education specialist credential. The multiple subject credential authorizes the holder to teach multiple subjects in what's called self-contained classrooms at the preschool, TK through 12, and in classes organized primarily for adults. Self-contained classrooms are classrooms where there's one teacher and you teach the same group of students all of the subjects in one day, similar to what you may have experienced at the elementary level. The single subject credential authorizes the holder to teach a single subject in what's called departmentalized classrooms in preschool, K through 12, and in classes organized primarily for adults. Departmentalized classrooms are classrooms where there's one teacher and you teach a different set of students every hour or every period, similar to what you may have experienced at the middle school or high school level. We also have the education specialist credentials, and the education specialist credentials authorize the holder to teach the subject listed on their credential to students with either mild to moderate disabilities or moderate to severe disabilities. And that is K through 12 and up to the age of 22. This next screen is just an infographic to provide you a broad overview of how to become a teacher based on where you currently are. So in the first circle on this pathway, for anyone who's currently attending a community college, because a bachelor's degree is required for the credential, we encourage you to continue your studies at the community college and transfer to a 4-year university. For those of you who might already be at a 4-year university working on your bachelor's degree, we encourage you to continue with your studies and try to maintain an overall GPA of 2.67. That's the minimum to transfer or to be admitted to a credential program at Cal Poly. Once you finish your bachelor's, you will then apply to a credential program, or actually you will apply probably at the end of your junior year, beginning of your senior year to a credential program. Just want to make sure that you meet all of the application deadlines for the university that you're applying. Once you are admitted to a credential program, you'll fulfill the credential program requirements and complete any additional requirements such as CPR or RECA if applicable. Once you have your credential, you'll apply for teaching positions, and the site where you'll go to apply for teaching positions is edjoin.org. If you want to check it out now just to kind of get an idea of what it looks like, what type of positions are there, feel free to do so. And then lastly, once you get hired, you can celebrate. Congratulations, you did it. You are now a teacher in your own classroom. So again, just a very broad overview of how to get from point A to point B based on where you currently are. Items number 2 and 3 that the state requires for the credential is the subject matter competency requirement and basic skills. They're 2 different requirements, and there's different ways to meet both. Both are required for a credential. The first one is subject matter competency, and the state of California basically wants to know that individuals are competent in the subject area that they're going to teach in their credential. So for example, if you're seeking a single subject math credential, the state wants to know that you are competent in math to be able to teach it to others. And there's two ways to demonstrate to the state that you are competent in your subject area. One is by taking the CSET, the California Subject Examinations for Teachers, or if you complete what's called a subject matter preparation program. The subject matter preparation programs have to be approved by the state, and subject matter preparation programs are typically completed in one's undergraduate studies. As an example, at Cal Poly Pomona on the right-hand side, lower right-hand side of the slide, these are the programs at Cal Poly that are commission approved. What that means is if you complete one of those programs, that demonstrates to the state that you're competent in that subject area and you don't have to take the CSET. So at Cal Poly, if you major in agriculture, biology, chemistry, English, geosciences, mathematics, and you complete those programs, the credential track of those programs, that demonstrates to the state that you are competent in your subject matter and you don't have to take the CSET. Now, excuse me, just 1 second. If you don't complete a commission-approved subject matter preparation program, that's okay. You don't have to. Just know that you will have to take the CSET for subject matter competency. I would like to note that for the elementary credential, one way to meet, or one program to meet subject matter competency could be a liberal studies program. And currently our program is not yet approved by the Commission for subject matter competency, but we are in the process of being approved. So hopefully we get that approval soon. And what that would mean is if you completed the liberal studies program pre-credential at Cal Poly, you wouldn't necessarily have to take the CSET. But we are waiting for that approval from the state. So stay tuned. We're hoping to get that very soon. The second requirement is called the basic skills requirement. And that requirement tests students on their math, reading, and writing skills. The state has outlined 6 options to demonstrate basic skills, and they're included here on the lower left-hand side of the screen. And that includes either passage of the CBEST, or you can pass the multiple subject CSET plus the writing skills CSET, and passage of those 4 tests demonstrates basic skills. You can also demonstrate basic skills through the passage of the CSU Early Assessment Program or the CSU Placement Examinations, and there's a qualifying score that you have to achieve. Number 4, if you achieved a qualifying score on your SATs or ACTs, you can use that to demonstrate basic skills to the state. Or if you took College Board examinations, AP examinations in high school for math and English, that could demonstrate basic skills to the state. Or if you passed a basic skills exam from out of state. On this lower right-hand side, there is a document on the CTC's website that lists all of these options as well as the qualifying scores. And if you want to check that out, you could determine if you satisfy the basic skills requirement through one of those options. You don't have to do all 6, you just have to demonstrate basic skills through one of those 6 options. Now, if you are currently at a community college looking to transfer to a 4-year university, on this screen I just provide the minimum requirements for the California State University to be eligible to be considered for admission. At Cal Poly, all of these requirements need to be met depending on when you apply. So for those of you are applying for fall enrollment, you'll need to have all of this satisfied by spring prior. If you're applying for spring enrollment, you'll have to have all of these items completed by summer prior to that, the year before. And those include must be in good standing at your last institution, must have a minimum 2.0 GPA in transferable coursework. You must have at least 60 transferable semester units, 90 quarter if you're at a quarter system, and 30 of those 60 transferable units must be in general education. Lastly, you will have to have completion of the Golden 4, and the Golden 4 are listed on the right-hand side. That includes the oral communication, the English composition, critical thinking, and mathematics or quantitative reasoning. So just know that you will have to have these completed prior to transferring to a CSU campus. If you're transferring or plan to transfer to a UC or a private institution, you'll want to check with those institutions to make sure that you meet the minimum transfer eligibility requirements. Now, just to give you some, what next, what can I do now as you plan to transfer to a four-year university or to a credential program. You'll want to start early, plan ahead, and be prepared. Again, if you're at a community college or at a four-year, work towards transferring, focus on that first. You need to do that. It's the first step. Decide on a major if you haven't already done so. Determine whether you'll need to study for the CSAT or if you plan to enroll in a commission-approved subject matter preparation program. Take the CBEST if you haven't already done that. That's one thing that you can knock out now. The CBEST does not expire once you pass. So once you pass, you just don't have to think about it. Then you would only either have to focus on the CSAT or your subject matter preparation program. And then lastly, you might want to just begin to look at opportunities to interact with the youth in a TK through 12 setting. One of the admission requirements for a credential program is early supervised field experience. So just begin to think about how you might participate in some of those activities. All right, I now would like to just transition to the credential programs at Cal Poly Pomona. We offer several programs and they're listed here on this screen. The first one is the multiple subject credential. This is a 42-unit program that can be completed in 3 to 4 semesters. That's full-time attendance. We also offer a single subject credential, which is a 36-unit program, and that can also be completed in 3 to 4 semesters, full-time attendance. At Cal Poly, for the single subject program, we do offer the following disciplines. So if you're interested in a single subject credential, you just want to double check that your particular discipline is listed on this screen. If it's not listed on that screen, what that means is that Cal Poly Pomona does not offer that particular discipline for a credential, and you would have to find out or seek out another program to see if they do offer your particular subject area. So for example, business. If you notice, business is not listed here on this slide, and that's because Cal Poly Pomona does not offer a business single subject credential. Again, you'd have to find another program that does offer that discipline. The single subject areas with the asterisk next to them, that just means that we have commission approved bachelor's programs in those particular subject areas. We also offer the education specialist credentials, and there's 2 options. There's the mild to moderate option, which is a 45-unit program, and the moderate to severe option, which is a 48-unit program. Because these are additional units, it does require an additional semester to complete, and these can be completed in 4 to 5 semesters full-time attendance. Now, part-time attendance is an option for all of our credential programs. As far as the time frame to complete these programs on a part-time status, it really depends on the pace in which the student sets for themselves. So they may decide to spread out their credential program units over 5 semesters or 6 or 7 or 8. There is no specified time for part-time. It just depends on what the student, how many units a student can take each semester. We also offer what's called an administrative services credential, and an administrative services credential is a credential for those who are currently educators, those who are already teaching in a classroom, and they're hoping to become a school site administrator, vice principal or principal, or even an administrator at the district level. And so this credential program can be completed after you've already been in the classroom teaching for 5 years. The administrative services credential is a 30-unit program and can be completed in 3 semesters, summer, fall, and spring. And we do also have what are called added authorizations. An added authorization is an authorization that can be added onto a multiple subject, single subject, or education specialist credential. We have the agriculture specialist added authorization. We have a adapted physical education added authorization, and we also have a bilingual added authorization. We offer that in Spanish and Chinese, Mandarin or Cantonese. You can work on the added authorizations concurrently with your credential coursework, or you can add these authorizations after you complete your credential coursework. Oops, my apologies. We hit the up button instead of the down button. Now, in addition to our credential programs, we also offer a combined credential and master's program. The combined program offers a credential with the Masters of Arts in Education, and there's 3 options for the Masters of Arts in Education. We have a curriculum and instruction emphasis, we have a special education emphasis, and we have an educational leadership emphasis. All of those Masters of Arts in Education programs are 30 units. I would like to note the Educational Leadership Master's option does require the completion of the Administrative Services credential. Now, the way our program is structured, the combined program at Cal Poly, is students will first apply and be admitted to a credential program. And then in the semester where you complete clinical practice, which is student teaching, you will submit a request to add the master's. Now, even though you submit that request in your last semester of credential coursework, you can actually begin taking master's courses once admitted to a credential program. Additionally, for those of you who do our credential program at Cal Poly, you are eligible to transfer up to 3 of your credential courses, or 9 units, towards the master's. So if the master's is a 30-unit program, and when you meet with the master's advisor, they review your credential coursework and they tell you, we're going to accept these 3 courses, or 9 units, 9 from 30 leaves you with 21 for the master's. You must complete your credential in order to be granted the master's degree, and no grade lower than a B is accepted from credential coursework towards the master's. So again, you just want to make sure you maintain a 3.0 GPA of credential coursework so that those courses could be eligible to be transferred to the master's. Lastly, we do offer what's called a teacher intern program. And the teacher intern program is a different route, or is one of the routes that you can complete your credential. So there's what we call the standard route and the teacher intern route. Coursework and exam requirements are the same for both routes. There's no change in that regard. The difference between the 2 routes is the manner in which you complete clinical practice. So for our standard route, students will complete all credential coursework first, and in your last semester of the program, you'll complete clinical practice. Our Office of Clinical Practice will place you in one of the 40 surrounding districts, and you will work alongside a host teacher for an entire semester, student teaching. For the teacher intern route, you complete your coursework and clinical practice requirements as you are a teacher of record in a classroom. You're already hired by a district and you're fulfilling clinical practice as you complete your coursework. Now, in order to be eligible for the teacher intern program, there are teacher intern eligibility requirements that you have to meet first. Again, coursework and exam requirements are the same, and you complete the clinical practice requirements throughout your program. All right, now moving on just into our admitting terms for the credential program, as well as I'm going to talk a little bit about the application requirements. So at Cal Poly, there's 3 admitting terms in which you can apply to a credential program. We have a spring start, a summer start, and a fall start. When applying to Cal Poly for the credential, it is a 2-step process. So you will submit an application to Cal State Apply to be admitted to the university, and then you'll also submit an application to the program to be admitted to the credential. Both applications are required for admission. If you complete one and not the other, they'll consider the application incomplete, and incomplete applications are denied. Now this next screen, it does list all of our application requirements. There's about 13 of them. They're listed here. Now I just want to note that this is a separate application process from when you transfer to Cal Poly for your bachelor's. I'm not going to go into too much detail here because I want you to focus first on transferring to Cal Poly. Once you transfer to Cal Poly, you're in your junior year or even the beginning of your senior year. If you want to meet with me, I'll be happy to go over these items in detail. But I don't want to confuse you between the credential application process and the transfer application process. They're 2 different applications, And because a bachelor's degree is required for admittance to a credential program, I want you to focus on the transfer application first. Typically, students will apply to a credential program at the end of their junior year and the beginning of their senior year. So this is later on after you're already at a four-year university. Now, if you already are at a four-year university and you're getting close to the end of your junior year and your senior year, if you want to reach out to me and we can schedule a separate appointment, I can go over these application requirements in more detail. I'm happy to do so either through Zoom, by email, or by phone. Now, one thing I will say, if you decide to attend Cal Poly Pomona for your undergraduate studies, one of the perks or benefits of doing so is you can actually begin your credential coursework in your undergraduate studies. And if you begin your credential coursework in your undergraduate studies, it actually shortens the time it takes you to complete the credential after you graduate with your bachelor's. So Cal Poly Pomona students with junior or senior standing can begin taking these 4 credential foundation courses, and they're listed by credential program. You don't need to meet with anyone. You can just go ahead and sign up for these as long as you have junior or senior standing. Now, if you aren't currently attending Cal Poly Pomona as an undergrad, unfortunately, it's not possible to begin taking those courses early. You would have to wait until after you're admitted to a credential program. All right. I'm now going to open up to some questions and answers, and I'll allow anyone to unmute themselves. But before I get to that, some of you did submit some questions when you RSVP'd, and I'd like to just touch on those 4 questions first, and then we'll open up to some additional questions. One student submitted, is it possible to get more than a single credential at a time? And the answer to that is yes. But typically, students, once you complete an initial credential, you can then add the additional credential. So for example, on this screen, let's say you decided to get a multiple subject credential first, but then you also want to add a single subject credential in, let's say, English. You wouldn't necessarily have to do a whole new credential program because you already have an initial credential. To add the additional credential, you would just need to take a single subject methods course in that subject area and take the CSET for subject matter competency. Once you completed those 2 requirements, you would apply to the state for the additional credential, and then you'd have 2 credentials. You'd have a multiple subject credential and a single subject credential, which might make you a little bit more marketable to districts. Now, it also works the other way. Let's say you get a single subject credential first, and you decide, I would like to add a multiple subject credential. You could do that without having to do an entire program. If you notice here in the middle, there are 4 requirements. You will have to take a multiple subject methods course. You'll also have to take a reading course. You'll have to take the multiple subject CSET and pass the RECA exam. Once you completed those 4 requirements, you would do the same thing. You would apply to the state for the additional credential, and then you'd have 2 credentials. Lastly, at the bottom, let's say you obtained a single subject English credential, but you also want to obtain a single subject history or social science credential. You could do that by demonstrating subject matter competency in the new subject, as well as taking a single subject methods course for the new subject. And then you'd have 2 credentials, single subject in English, as well as a single subject in social science. Now, you can also do that with an education specialist credential, but the education specialist credential is considered a different credential because you're working with a different population of students. And as such, there are more requirements to add the education specialist credential, as well as another round of clinical practice is required. So I didn't list the requirements here on the screen. We just recommend that students reach out to us. They'll review what you already have, and then they'll let you know what additional requirements are needed. But it is a possibility. I wanted you to be aware of that. And vice versa. If you do an education specialist credential first, you want to add a multiple subject or single subject, you can do that. You're never, I guess, in some cases, some students think, oh, if I only get a single, that's all I can do. No, there are options to add to your profile. Another question we had was someone was asking about information on the CBEST and CSET. There is this website, the CCTE Exams, which is where you'll go to register for all your exams. And they do include preparation material and sample test questions. So just if you don't mind, I'm going to pause and I'm going to take you to that website because it's usually I recommend for students start there because it gives you sample test questions as well as gives you an idea of what the test is going to entail. So this is the website. It's the California Educator Credentialing Assessments. This top portion is specifically related to COVID, so you might want to just review that. But if you scroll down, you should see a picture, and just below that picture in a drop-down menu, you'll be able to select whatever assessment you're interested in finding more information about. So as an example, we'll select the CBEST, the California Basic Educational Skills Test, and select Go. On this screen, it's going to tell you what the test consists of, which is math, reading, and writing. It'll also tell you the number of multiple choice questions for each section, as well as if there's any essays. They'll provide you with information on computer-based testing as well as paper-based testing. And then also the fees for the exam, they're different depending on the format that you decide to take the test. They also include passing scores. So it gives you everything you need to know about the exam. Additionally, at the top in this light blue area, there's a heading titled Preparation Materials. If you select on that, you can then access sample test questions. So just as an example, if we select the math practice test, what's nice about these practice tests is they give you an answer sheet so you can log your answers, and then they give you actual questions. So you can take a look at that and say, okay, you know what? I think I'm okay with math. I did okay, or you know what? I'm kind of struggling with math. Maybe I need to do some prep courses for math. But it'll give you I think it's all 40 questions. And at the very end, it gives you the answers. So it's a great tool to just gauge where you're at and then decide, do I need additional preparation or am I ready to sign up and take this test? And they do it for all sections. So math, reading, and writing. You can also click on the CSET and do the same thing. Let's see, I'm going to take us back to the PowerPoint, and then we will get to questions shortly, so just hang on just a little bit more. We're almost there. Another question that we got from a student was, when applying, do I apply as a transfer to the pre-credential transfer? When you decide to apply to Cal Poly Pomona, it's up to you on what program you apply to. If the major that you are applying to has a pre-credential option and you're interested in that, you can definitely indicate that on your application. Another question we got was the cost of the program. At Cal Poly Pomona, the way that tuition is based is on the classification of the student and the number of units you take per semester. So on this left-hand side, I did take a screenshot from our tuition and fees page. For the credential fee schedule, you can click on that and this table will drop down. And in this brownish area, you'll notice there's a column for 0 to 6 units. And if you go to the bottom of that column, it's about 2,700 for the semester. If a student enrolls in 6.1 and above units, if you go to the bottom of that column, it's about 4,100 for the semester. As an estimate, if you completed the program's full-time attendance, it would cost about $12,600 for the multiple subject, and the same cost for single subject. It's about $12,600. For the education specialist credential, if you remember, it takes an additional semester to complete, and because you have that additional semester, it's going to cost a little bit more, and that would be about $16,800. Now, this is based on the fall 2020 fee schedule and does not include the cost of books. Please note that the university does update their fee schedules every year. So this estimate that you see on the screen could be slightly different from what you see by the time that you enroll in a credential program. If you're also interested in the master's, there's a graduate fee schedule, which is slightly higher than the credential fee schedule. And if you completed the master's in, let's say, one additional semester from the credential, you would add about 4,400 to these estimates here. If it took you 2 semesters to complete the master's after the credential, you would add about an additional 8,900 to what you see listed here. There was one question, and I may need to reach out to this student individually about how do I get your permit to be an assistant preschool teacher? And we don't offer that particular permit at Cal Poly Pomona, but there is the CTC website that does provide more information on child development site supervisor permits. So I will reach out to you individually just to clarify what exactly you're seeking, and so that I can provide you with links to the information on how to do that. Lastly, there is a slide where I provide all these resources to different links to our campus, including the CTC website. So I'll share this with you all so that you have access to all of these links. And then if you have any additional questions, you can reach out to me anytime. My phone number or email are listed here on the screen. I'm more than happy to sit down with you, well, not in person because of COVID, but I could sit down with you through Zoom and we can address any questions that you have. Let's see. I think I might have some questions here. Shailin is asking, how do we take prep courses for the CBEST? There are prep courses available. You could just Google CBEST test prep or CSET test prep, and it'll provide you with either private agencies that offer test prep. Unfortunately, Cal Poly Pomona does not offer test prep, but I know that Mount SAC does offer CBEST test prep, and Citrus College does as well, but theirs, I think they only focus on the math portion. I'd have to double check their website, but they do offer those right now, I think through Zoom because of COVID. And then there are some agencies that do charge a fee. For example, I think Teachers Test Prep is another one, as well as 240 Tutoring. They both offer access to their preparation materials, but they do charge a fee. Amber, oh yes, can we please have your email? It is here on the screen. Was there any other questions that I can address? We're doing okay on time. It's about 12:40, so if you want to stick around for some questions, I'm available to do that. I did just want to mention to you all, I wanted to remind you of some upcoming events. We have our keynote speaker, Roy Juarez Jr., who will be speaking tomorrow, Friday, November 6th, beginning at 10 a.m. So you might want to, if you haven't already, please register for that so you have the link to participate in that keynote speaker, as well as our networking and transfer fair, which will be at the last day of this event, which is Friday, November 20th. It's from 11 to 12:30. And again, registration is required. So if you haven't yet registered, please be sure to do that. And the last thing I am going to put in our chat box is a link to a survey for these presentations. So I highly encourage you to submit your responses. It definitely helps us in planning for this event and making it better for the next time that we do offer this. So I'm going to copy that and put that in the next screen. But if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and let me know, and we can address those questions.
Hi, Jeanne. I have a question. I already applied for the Cal State application.
Mm-hmm.
And so what would be my next step? Expecting an email from you guys, or?
And this was for your bachelor's degree in undergraduate program, correct?
I'm transferring from Citrus.
Okay.
So
yes. So you should hear something from the university. I think, and is this for spring 2021 or is this for?
It's spring. I'm sorry, fall 2021.
Okay. So I think and I'd have to go on the Cal State Apply website to see. I think it closes December 1st or December 4th. So you might not hear anything until after it closes. I'm not 100% sure. But you should be hearing shortly, the decision from the university. And then once you have your decision, they'll give you next steps as far as, if you need to submit official transcripts or orientation dates. They're going to give you more information, but you might just have to hold out and wait a little bit more until you receive your decision.
Okay. And then step number 2 would be the program application, right?
Well, great question. And I'm glad you asked this, Christina. So because our credential programs are offered as post-baccalaureate programs, you need to complete your bachelor's in order to be admitted to a credential. So the application to a credential program, you're not going to do that until your end of your junior year or senior year once at Cal Poly. So right now, you're not going to submit that program application. You're going to wait until after you're admitted and you begin courses at Cal Poly.
Okay, thanks.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Great question. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have another question.
Mm-hmm.
So if I do liberal studies and get my bachelor's, then my master's and the credential program, does my financial aid still cover that?
So financial aid is broken up, I believe, by program. So if you have financial aid for your undergraduate studies, that's specific to your undergraduate studies. And then if you decide to apply for financial aid for credential and master's, that's different. So what I would recommend is at this point, focus on your transferring to Cal Poly, focus on your undergraduate financial aid. And as you near the completion of your undergraduate degree, your bachelor's, then you can start focusing on, okay, now I need to apply for financial aid for my credential and graduate program. I need to apply to the graduate program. That's going to be your second step. Your first step is just focus on transferring to Cal Poly and financial aid for your undergraduate degree.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I see we have a question in the chat. How do I get information for scholarships and grants? Is that something we do before we transfer? Now, again, there's scholarships and grants per program. So if you're asking about scholarships and grants for your undergraduate program, that's going to be different than scholarships and grants for the credential and graduate. Which one are you, Shailene, is that for your undergrad or graduate? Graduate, okay. I can send you links to that. But again, just keep in mind that this is separate from your undergrad. And I want you to focus on, if you have not yet transferred to a four-year university, I want you to focus on that first, because that's your first step. And then once you're at the four-year university, then we can talk about the application process to the credential and the scholarships and grants for the credential graduate. Okay, but I will send that to you in after today's presentation. And just as an example to all of you, let me, I'm going to take you to our credential programs website, which includes a link to the scholarships and grants. But as I'm pulling that up, if anyone else has a question, feel free to chime in or speak up. Okay, so this is our credential programs page. Just below this picture, you'll notice these blue tabs. And on the far right hand side, just below the picture, there's a scholarships tab. If you click on there, this lists the scholarships for the credential programs. And you'll want to scroll down because there's several. They are specific by program, meaning some scholarships are only specific to the education specialist credential. Some are specific to a single subject credential, math, or a single subject science. Some are available for all of our programs. So you'll just want to review those and make sure that that particular scholarship or grant does apply to the credential program you're interested in. Additionally, I want to take you to the Office of Financial Aid and Scholarships. I thought I spelled that wrong. And the reason for that is because there is a portion on that website specifically for credential students. And then there's also, whatever reason I didn't type, there's also information on undergrad financial aid if you're interested in that as well. So this is our Office of Financial Aid and Scholarships website. On the left-hand side, you'll see headings. If you click on the heading Aid by Career, it'll show you for undergraduate students, credential students, graduate students, and doctoral students. So it's broken up by classification. If you click on Credential, this is going to give you information on the types of grants and scholarships, financial aid that's available for credential. If you're interested in undergrad, you can click on the undergraduate studies. And again, it'll go over grants, financial aid, scholarships, etc. that's available specifically for an undergraduate program. Let's see. I see there's a question. What if you are considering becoming a school site counselor? And just to clarify, when you say school site counselor, do you mean like a counselor at the elementary, middle school, or high school level? Okay. So there is what's called a school counseling, school psychology degree, which is different from a credential. If you're interested in becoming a school site counselor, you would have to pursue either a school counseling or school psychology. And some of those are offered as master's programs. Cal Poly Pomona does not offer those programs, excuse me, but I believe Cal State Long Beach does, excuse me, as well as I think Cal State LA. Cal State Fullerton might as well, but it's been a while since I've been on their website, so I'd have to go back to search to see if they offer that. But if you're interested in that, you'll want to research campuses that do offer that particular program. Unfortunately, Cal Poly Pomona does not offer that program.
Hi, Jeanne. You mentioned that some of the units would be carried over to the master's program. So first, for the liberal arts, do you have a list of like all the classes for us to see in advance?
For liberal studies, what I can show you is I can take you to our liberal studies page, which I believe has the curriculum sheets for what's required as far as coursework. Now, in my presentation, when I was mentioning credential courses could be eligible to be transferred toward the master's, that's different from the liberal studies degree, because liberal studies is an undergraduate degree. So at this point, there's no liberal studies courses that could be transferred to the credential. But once you're in the credential program, it's possible to transfer some of those credential courses towards the master's. But for the liberal studies, if we click on liberal studies department, and then if we click on program information, let me just move my screen really quickly.
I just got to get the shipping code up at the top, but I have everything.
Let's see. I was just on here yesterday. Program options. Okay, so with the liberal studies, there's degree or the major, there's two options. There's the general studies, and then there's the pre-credential. If you wanted to see what's required, for example, on the pre-credential curriculum sheet, you can click on there. And I do apologize, the font is really, really tiny, and there's a lot of information. It's really jam-packed because they kind of want to include it all in one sheet. So I apologize for it being small, but this is all of the courses required for the liberal studies pre-credential track. It's 120 units. There's the core courses, there's sub-plans, and you'll select one of these emphasis for the liberal studies. On the right-hand side, there's the general education requirements, and there is, I believe, 3 upper division general education courses that you do have to take at Cal Poly. I believe all of the other general education requirements could possibly be completed at a community college. You'll want to just double check with the community college as well as your major at Cal Poly, just to confirm. But this is everything that's required for the liberal studies.
So
And then,
if I'm transferring from Citrus, some of these courses I've already completed, right? So
possibly. You would want to check assist.org to see if there's an articulation agreement between Citrus and Cal Poly Pomona. Usually they're listed when you look that up. If there's no articulation agreement, that means that there's no course at Citrus that you could take to qualify for certain classes. But there are, I know, some classes on this sheet that you can take at Citrus that are articulated.
Okay, so how do I, so would I meet with the counselor to like map out my classes and what to take?
They will, once you're admitted to the university, I believe they go over that during orientation.
Okay.
So they're not going to just, you know, give you this sheet and say, go ahead and register. There's someone there that's going to walk you through it and help you register for your classes.
Okay.
And kind of map out your plan to complete your bachelor's degree.
Got it. Thank you. So this one you're showing us is the pre-credential. Is this the one where it's combined or no?
This is, again, the combined program is credential and master's. This is liberal studies. You can't, at this point, you can't combine a liberal studies degree with the credential. They're two separate programs. You have to do the liberal studies first and then do the credential.
Okay, but don't you guys offer the bachelor's and credentials combined?
We do, but only for the education specialist credential. It's not combined with the multiple subject or single subject.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
If I take you back, let me just show you. So for that combined program that Christina was inquiring about, oops, sorry, let me move this out of the way. Let me take you there. So for we do have what's called an integrated teacher education program. It's a combined bachelor's and credential, but at this point, it's only combined with the liberal studies major and an education specialist credential, mild to moderate or moderate to severe. You can complete, after 4 years, you could have your bachelor's degree and credential. If you're interested in a different major other than liberal studies, unfortunately, you can't do the integrated program because it's only combined specifically with liberal studies and the education specialist credential.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I do have one more question.
Sure.
The added authorization that you mentioned, bilingual, well, to become bilingual in Spanish, that's, I guess, like a special certificate that we get, or?
So if you are interested in the bilingual added authorization, you can add that to a multiple subject credential. Let me take you to, we do have an added authorization portion of our website.
Okay.
So on the credential programs page, if you scroll down, oh, I'm sorry, let me get to the credential page first. So this is our, again, if you scroll all the way down, you'll see the added authorization, and there's links to some of our added authorizations. Our agriculture specialists we're currently working on, which is why you don't see the link active. But for bilingual, if you click on bilingual, this talks about the bilingual added authorization, and you can do it concurrently with your credential coursework, or you can add it after you've completed your credential, and there's links to both. So if you do not yet possess a teaching credential, you're currently working on it, you would click on here to find out what the requirements are. And then if you've already finished your teaching credential and you want to add the bilingual added authorization, you'll click the link at the bottom. They're similar, but they're slightly different as far as the requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Now we are getting to the hour, and for those of you who might have other commitments or other workshops you'd like to join, I would like to just take the opportunity to thank you all for joining. It's been a pleasure. We do hope that you decide to apply to Cal Poly Pomona. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'll send you, like I said, a link to the video and the PowerPoint presentation after today's session. I hope you all stay safe, stay healthy, and like I said, we do look forward to receiving your application.
Thank you, Jeanne. Actually, I have one more question.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. You mentioned that instead of taking the test, you guys are getting together a program to eliminate the CBEST test?
Not the CBEST, you mean the CSET, subject
Yes.
matter competency?
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
What are those classes consist of?
Each program is different. So, for example, we have our math program has a commission-approved subject matter preparation program, and I think that's 59 units that's required to meet the waiver for the CSET. For English, the units could be a little bit higher. It could be 74, could be 80. They all vary. And if you complete the credential track of your major, they embed those courses as part of your major.
Okay, thank you. So you don't have a list of what you guys have put together as Poly?
They're all different. I'd have to send you a different form by program.
Oh, okay, okay.
And just keep in mind, liberal studies is not yet approved.
Okay.
We are hoping to get that approval, but because it's not yet approved, we don't yet have that list to provide to students because we're waiting on the approval from the commission.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't mean to forget. There is one more student that had a question about the theater teacher options for K-8 or higher. So at the moment, the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing does not have a theater credential option. At this point, theater is included in the English credential. So if you're interested in teaching theater at this point, you would have to pursue a single subject English credential. Now, the commission is working on a theater single subject credential, but it's not yet available. So I don't know when that option will be available, nor do I know if Cal Poly will offer that option because that's something the credential program would have to look at creating. So at the moment, Berzel, you would have to pursue a single subject English credential to teach theater. And then Miriam, I think you're asking, do we get a certificate for this workshop? I think I have access to a template that I could create a certificate for you and send to you. If you don't mind, let me just double check and then I'll let you know by email if I could send you that certificate. If not, maybe, I don't know if my email indicating that I'm verifying that you attended this workshop would be sufficient for whatever you need or whomever you need to show that you attended. I'm happy to do that as well. Okay. And then, okay, Marissa, I see that. Thank you. And to anyone else, if you also would like a certificate, just let me know. You could always shoot me an email if you find out later that you would like one. I'm happy to accommodate. Well, again, I just want to thank you all for today's session. Don't forget to fill out the survey, the link's in the chat. Don't also forget to attend tomorrow's keynote speaker, as well as the transfer fair, which is I think it's in 3 weeks. And you do have to register, so make sure you sign up for both of those. Allison, I will send you a certificate. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day and look forward to talking to you all soon.